and we have to really escalate the noise we make so that we'll be heard.
Welcome to Gay USA. I'm Andy Hum.
I am Ann Northrup, celebrating Lesbian Week in the US of A.
We should change the name this week to Lesbian USA because lesbian candidates for mayor won or advanced in 3 major US cities, making history.
There's hope yet, America. We can rise. Just stay calm and stay attuned. Pay attention. Meanwhile, Congress held hearings on the federal LGBT rights bill, the Equality Act, and Republicans, of course, are digging in against it.
As they are in Texas and Tennessee, where they are passing anti-LGBT legislation.
Yeah, not so good news there. And we're sorry to hear about Virginia Uribe dying, age 85. She was a total pioneer for LGBT youth in public schools.
Brunei's law that calls for death by stoning for homosexuality and adultery, are you listening, Mr. President, was denounced by everyone from George Clooney to Ted Cruz.
Now, remember when we protested cruise ships for stopping at the Cayman Islands because they were so homophobic? Well, now marriage equality is a reality in the Cayman Islands.
And we're going to tell you about a way to fly Harvey Milk.
And we'll tell you and show you a trailer for a new Netflix comedy on a gay man with cerebral palsy, which is a series starting April 12th.
It looks charming.
It does.
All right, we start in Chicago. Chicago, Lori Lightfoot, out lesbian, was elected mayor. 74% of the vote she got in a runoff.
Wow.
She's the first African-American woman. She was running against an African-American woman opponent. She's the 3rd African-American overall and the 2nd woman to hold the seat, but she beat Toni Preckwinkle. And
she is certainly the first out LGBT person, out lesbian, to be the mayor of Chicago. And
and the first out LGBT woman of color to lead any of America's 100 largest cities.
Look, to go from Rahm Emanuel to Lori Lightfoot, although they have some affiliation, is quite a leap.
Did he endorse her?
I don't know that
she
he
ran as a
endorsed
change agent. Her spouse is Amy Eshelman. They have a daughter.
Now the first lady of Chicago.
They have a daughter, They have a daughter, Vivian, who's 10. It's her first elective office. She'd been a prosecutor and held other city posts.
Federal prosecutor.
But there she is, and it's,
There she is. She's 5'1". I think that's the big news, that the people of Chicago would elect someone 5'1" as mayor.
How tall is Bloomberg? He's not very
taller
tall.
than 5'1".
He's not very tall.
I know, yes, but generally people elect tall people.
It's true. The tall candidate, you can go through history, is usually the one who wins.
Not always.
Not always at all.
A lot. So she, as Andy said, was elected as a reformer. She ran a police oversight council and came down very hard on the police department. So she has promised to clean up the police department of Chicago somewhat and to have everybody work together. So fingers crossed for Lori Lightfoot.
We're not experts on Chicago politics or on this. I have a viewer who wrote me a note saying she is less than enthusiastic, but give her a chance. She did say she would reform. And then we go to Madison, Wisconsin, where an out lesbian, Satya Rhodes Conway, defeated the longtime mayor, Paul Soglin. Now, she's the first out mayor there, first woman. Soglin was first elected in 1973, served a total of 22 years,
yes,
but has been around forever.
Satya has a partner and dogs and cats. She's a scientist. She works at the University of Wisconsin at an institute that trains government officials. So the thinking is that perhaps she knows something about good government. And she also serves on the Food Council, which is concerned about making sure everyone in the city is fed. So she looks like a real good government type.
She looks like a good presidential candidate for 2024. Or maybe this year, if depending how if everybody else gets knocked off.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, that big race in the Wisconsin Supreme Court, they vote for Wisconsin Supreme Court Justice. This was to replace a liberal, has been, well, tentatively won. I mean, it's less than a 6,000 vote margin out of 1.2 million votes cast.
There may be a recount.
It's this guy, Hagedorn. He is somebody who has compared homosexuality to bestiality. He has said the NAACP is a disgrace to America. This was the Koch brothers pouring their money into an off-year election. Trump won Wisconsin very narrowly. Last year, we elected a Democratic governor. The majority of the people voted for Democrats in the legislature, but still got a Republican legislature. So, discouraging.
It's very confusing in Wisconsin. We have, of course, out lesbian U.S. Senator Tammy Baldwin from Wisconsin, and now Satya is the out lesbian mayor of Madison. But at the same time, Scott Walker was elected governor, and now this guy gets on the Supreme Court.
This is a state that had a fantastic progressive tradition, the Lafollettes, and then, of course, gave us Joe McCarthy.
Yes, exactly, that too.
Right.
But more lesbian political good news from Kansas City, Missouri, where in the mayor's race there, the top vote getter in a multi-person primary, I think 13 candidates, something like that, Jolie Justice. She's on the right there, holding the dog with her wife on the left.
Very good idea to hold a dog in your photo.
Well, I'm happy to see that they're holding their partners, that their wives and partners are in these photos. Everybody's very out. Everybody's very cool. And Jolie is now in a runoff election on June 18th for the mayorship against Quentin Lucas, African-American man. And she got more votes than him in the primary, but just by a little. And now that the other dozen or so candidates are gone, we'll see what happens with the two of them.
Pete Buttigieg's husband is becoming quite a thing.
Exactly.
Chaston, I think his name is, and his last name is Buttigieg.
And we're also looking at the April 23rd runoff for mayor of Tampa, Florida, where the expected winner is... say it with me again, out lesbian Jane Castor.
All right.
Now, the only current out lesbian mayor in the country is... I couldn't have answered it either.
I know Anise Parker's gone. She's at the Victory Fund.
Yes. Jenny Durkin in Seattle.
Right. She replaced the mayor who had to...
yes, the gay mayor.
Ed Murray?
Yes.
See?
Was it Ed Murray or was it? Maybe. And there's also an out gay mayor, Robert Garcia in Long Beach, California. But that's about it for any kind of major city at the moment.
And if we made any mistakes, you will tell us.
But two definite and two probable new lesbian mayors in major cities around the country. That is pretty stunning.
Great progress.
So what do you think, Pete's, does this raise Pete's chances of the presidency?
That his husband is standing by him?
No, that all these out lesbians are being elected as mayors of these cities.
Yes, and we now have a poll that found that 54% of Americans are comfortable with a gay candidate for president, and another 14% said they would be enthusiastic about such a candidate. That's a total of 68%. And there was also the public policy polling that was done this past week that found every major Democrat beats Trump. Biden by 53-40. This was before some of his news. Sanders 48-42. But Harris and Booker and Warren and Gillibrand and O'Rourke, Buttigieg beats Trump, and he's relatively unknown, 45-41, which means that whoever you give us, we're voting for him. We want to get rid of him. He stays at 41, 42, 40. That's it. Now, of course, that's not the electoral vote. That's the national vote.
Look, I am still quite astonished that I know we've elected Tammy Baldwin to the Senate and Kirsten Sinema. I know we have, I think, more than half a dozen LGBT people in the House now. But I still think this is astonishing right this minute to have Pete Buttigieg be so popular and raising a lot of money, and to have these women elected as mayors.
I think Pete is sort of our Macron. And I said this years ago in the sense that somebody would emerge who we're not talking about, because people want a fresh face, someone who they don't know as much involved in politics.
Definitely, but I hope he doesn't turn out to be Macron.
Well, no, but when Macron was elected, he's under 40 and was very, very appealing at the time. I realize, right now with the yellow vest and the whole thing, it's not working out so well. Now, of course, I had a picture. I should have put it up higher of the women candidates running.
Yes, if the control room can
possibly
ride
pull
with
that
us
up.
and put up
because there's a lot of talk. These are the women: Kamala Harris, Kirsten, Tulsi Gabbard, Amy Klobuchar, and Elizabeth Warren. And the story that this was taken from is about the fact that all the attention is on the male faces, Beto and Pete and Joe and things, and not on all
Bernie.
these all these very capable women who are running for office, except maybe Tulsi.
No.
I always make an exception for her.
Incapable, yes. Well, but the knock on the women is that they're concentrating too much on policy, and that Beto is doing well because he's not saying anything about policy.
People get elected because people take to them, and usually it's over one thing. It's not over a lot of things.
Well, and I maintain that what is giving Buttigieg such a lift is that he inspires confidence. I think his sort of calm, confident demeanor projects, and people take confidence from that. He's not frenetic.
Right, that's true. I mean, because we see so many of these candidates speaking at rallies where they're yelling. You don't have to yell when you're at the rally. They'll hear you. You should be speaking in a voice that more,
it's more casual and conversational.
Exactly.
And sometimes they are trying too hard to get everything in. And so they speak too fast and they tumble over their words, and it's not appealing.
No.
So I really think it is Pete Buttigieg's affect as much as anything that is making him so popular.
Yes. But when I pause here, you ask if I'm falling asleep.
Well, I rewatched the beginning of last week's show, and I think I was a little hard on you.
Thanks.
I apologize
That's
for
all
that.
right. It's all right. I do like to pause for effect. Where should we go now? Well, let's talk about the hearings on the Equality Act, shall we?
Sure.
All right, so some federal things. By the way, first of all, and we do have a picture here, the House rebuked the Trump trans ban by a vote of 238 to 185. That's very encouraging that they would do that.
And Sunday was Trans Visibility Day, and so the trans community went to Congress, to the Hill, and gave trans flags to every member of Congress, and many of them put them outside their doors and displayed them for Trans Visibility Day.
So Jerry Nadler and the House Judiciary Committee had the first hearing on the Equality Act, which is our federal LGBT rights bill and covers other things. So there was lots of debate in this hearing about trans women in sports. And actually, it was Representative Ted Deutsch of Florida who thanked his Republican colleagues for their newfound concern for women in sports, which they hadn't had before. They had a Republican panelist there. Well, they had a panelist there for the Republican side who was a TERF, a trans exclusionary radical feminist, Julia Beck, saying this will be the end of women's sports. And
I hate calling these people feminists.
Well, that's what they call themselves. The Republicans were just trying to scare people about some trans person who's going to get into a man who's going to pretend to be a woman to get into prison and rape women. And finally, some of the other panelists, like Kenji Yoshino and things, can we talk about the crap that and horror and violence that trans people experience every day in this country because you won't pass this bill? And Representative Pramila Jayapal from Seattle, I believe, came out about having a non-binary 22-year-old child, spoke very movingly. There was also a lot of talk about religious freedom. But it's going to pass the House.
Yes, it is.
With a vote like that on trans in the military, it's going to pass.
No question. The question is there any way in hell to get it through the Senate? Not to mention the president signing it, but this is a good start. You know, we are still farther along than we have been in the past, and the Equality Act is a brilliant bill because it fixes the Civil Rights Acts, several of them, in all sorts of ways, because they're very patchwork in what and whom they cover. And this applies not only to the LGBTQ plus population, but to women who've been left out of certain parts of some of these acts, to race, which has been left out of some parts of some of these acts.
And it clarifies exactly how you're covered with religious freedom.
Yes.
And not, because they want to use it as a cudgel against us. And we very much need it now because the organization DOJ Pride from the Department of Justice, the LGBT group that's been around for more than 20 years, they're now reporting that the Justice Department under Sessions and now Barr has become a hostile work environment for LGBT people.
Surprise.
People are leaving in droves, especially from the FBI training school where you got to be masculine or enough. And it's also apparently a lot of discrimination against Latinx people there. So that's one of the reasons we need the law.
All right. How about
and I should also mention that we talk about all kinds of federal decisions that are bad. Trump got 2 federal decisions against him this week. One, a judge ruled against him on opening up the Arctic to drilling. And another federal judge in the District of Columbia ruled that his plans to offer substandard health plans, which is his plan, runs afoul of the ACA. You can't do that. You've got to give people decent plans. You've got to cover pre-existing conditions, et cetera.
I, of course, am struck by it every day, but the shamelessness of his line just, I think, escalates every day. Whether he's lying about health care, lying about Puerto Rico, lying about
everything.
Everything.
And
every
mispronouncing things, too.
Well, that's just his brain synapses not firing. But the new book about him cheating at golf and how this is analogous to the way he's doing the presidency. Of course, he's a cheater. He cheats at everything.
Right.
He cheated his contractors who he wouldn't pay. He cheats every single thing he does. He cheats.
And what we're learning is that's why the other side wanted him, is because he's a miserable character who would do battle with us.
Right.
Now, the U.S. House from the Bronx may get a horrible person there. But, you know, Jose Serrano has been there for a long time representing the Bronx. He's not running in 2020. And council member Richie Torres from the city council is looking at that race. But now, so is right-wing anti-LGBT Democrat Ruben Diaz Sr. We have a picture of him there at one of his, where he was being attacked for his homophobic remarks recently.
Always in the cowboy hat.
Mostly. And, this would be a disaster. He's got a big base with his evangelical church.
Yes, he does.
And on a lot of economic issues, he's rather populist, but he's very anti-LGBT.
Very.
Despite his gay staff.
And I want to congratulate and thank Sean Patrick Maloney, representative. What? I know. Hell has frozen over. But Sean has introduced a bill called the Prohibition of Medicaid Funding for Conversion Therapy. And not only would it prevent such funding for conversion therapy, but it, government funding, but it also, in the bill, includes mention of inappropriate phony billing, how they work around it to be able to hide the fact that they're getting reimbursed for conversion therapy. And it targets that, too, very directly. Good. So thank you, Sean. That sounds like an excellent bill, and we appreciate it and hope you can make some progress with it.
Well, that's not going to make the U.S. Pastors Council very happy, and they've joined with a private health care company challenging the EEOC from infringing their religious rights by pursuing LGBT discrimination cases on the basis of sex. And they want to be exempted from all this.
Yes, they all do.
And Indiana, the Human Rights Campaign is urging the governor to veto a hate crimes bill that excludes trans people.
Yes, and that's a nice turnaround for HRC, which years ago was happy to pass an employment non-discrimination bill that did not include gender identity. And they are the authors of the Equality Act. They have turned around, and that's very nice to see. Also in Indiana, they're still going back and forth about this business of making a gender identity change on your ID.
Yep.
The House, the Republicans in the House wanted to put in harsher requirements for changing your ID, and that has now been tabled and stopped for the moment. The state did allow for changing in an easier way, and then the Republicans came after it, challenging that, but they've been halted for the moment.
Well, they
delayed.
don't want to let you change in Texas. The Fifth Circuit, a very conservative circuit, the Court of Appeals, ruled 2-1 that it's okay for Texas to deny gender confirmation surgery for prisoners. It was written by a Trump appointee, James Ho. We told you about him when he was up, and he's horrible. He said it doesn't violate the constitutional ban on cruel and unusual punishment. And he said experts question whether surgery is better than counseling or hormones.
I want to do a little rundown of conversion therapy stories around the country. First of all, HRC suspended Google from their corporate equity index because Google was the only major tech company that would not remove conversion therapy app from their site. So then HRC suspended them, and what do you know? Google turned around and repealed and took out that app.
Speaking of Google, by the way, the workers there want the Heritage Foundation president, Kay Coles James, removed from an advisory council on artificial intelligence because of her anti-LGBT views.
The governor of Puerto Rico has issued an executive order banning conversion therapy for minors in Puerto Rico. And in New Jersey, the Southern Poverty Law Center says that Jonah, the group that was doing conversion therapy, got sued and was forbidden by the court from doing it. Well, they just changed their name, and they're still doing it. That's their way of getting around.
Are they getting reimbursement from third party reimbursement?
I don't know, but they've got
That's the issue.
Well,
you can do it if you're a religious group. You want to try to change people. You go right ahead, but don't take any.
Well, they were
convicted
of consumer fraud, and I think they're doing the same thing. It's now called the. Wait a second, I had it. The Jewish Institute for Global Awareness is now the conversion therapy outfit in New Jersey. And in Massachusetts, the legislature, by huge margins in both houses, has passed a no conversion therapy for minors bill. And the Republican governor, Charlie Baker, has not announced whether or not he's going to sign it, although the majorities are such in the Senate and House that they could override a veto. But he has said recently that he was inclined to sign it. So we'll follow that and see if he does.
Then there's Texas. The state Senate passed a bill there, now get this, to allow state-sanctioned discrimination in more than 200 professions licensed or regulated by the state. This is the evil handiwork of Lieutenant Governor Dan Patrick. It passed 19-12 in the Senate. It allows any kind of discrimination on religious grounds. And amendments, they did pass an amendment to exempt first responders, so they do have to put the fire out at your house. An amendment to ban discrimination based on sexual orientation that our side brought up failed, 18-13, and an amendment to require reporting by licensees who want to discriminate failed. So we're not going to know who these people are.
Well, what the law says is
5 more anti-gay bills scheduled for next week.
Yes.
In Texas.
Anybody in any of these 200 professions requiring licensing cannot be denied a license because they discriminate. They can still be sued or whatever, but they cannot be denied a state license for this. And yes, there is another Texas thing. Ken Paxton, the twin of the lieutenant governor,
he's the Attorney
General. He is now investigating the San Antonio City Council rejection of a Chick-fil-A outlet at the airport in San Antonio. He is calling it religious discrimination. But of course, you know, they don't care if people discriminate against us, but they care about what they call religious discrimination.
Of course.
The government is supporting the religions, but not supporting the people. But
the Buffalo Niagara Airport has dropped Chick-fil-A.
yes. So maybe it's a movement.
All right.
Yeah.
By the way, speaking of transgender folks, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez is speaking up for Chelsea Manning in solitary confinement.
Good.
Confinement, calls that torture for whistleblowing.
And another death of a trans person, Ashanti Carmen, shot dead in Maryland.
Yes.
35,
Black trans woman.
Yeah, 35 years old. The good news, if you can call it that, is that this is only the second report this year of a black trans woman being murdered. I hate to put it in those terms.
She had a fiance who said they would just been out to dinner the night before, and we don't know the circumstances.
We don't, but for the last 3 years, the total for the year of reported deaths, and I believe these deaths are vastly underreported, has been in the mid-20s. So the fact that we're at the beginning of April now, and we've only heard about 2 is good news. But there was also another murder of an LGBT person in New York City, Fabian Smalls, 27 years old.
Also known as Twitch. He was killed by, he was killed by someone who we lived with, not in the same room, but in a supportive housing thing for homeless kids. He had come to our New Alternatives program. They arrested a guy named Christopher Dixon, 26, who had no previous record. But it was a stabbing death that started inside the building and ended up, and we're still trying to get more details on that. By the way, I missed a political note. In Pennsylvania, there was a special election for state senate, and Democrat Pam Iovino won the special in the Pittsburgh suburbs.
Oh, that's good.
And the Republicans still have a 26 to 23 edge there, but and this was a district that Trump had won.
Right, exactly.
Right.
Let's spend a little time on Virginia Uribe.
Yes. This was a true LGBT education pioneer because she instituted Project 10 in Los Angeles, a school-based program, and had to stand up to the religious right to get it to stay there. It was a very small program in the beginning. And
just a little...
Lou Sheldon, you remember that name? He went after her. He wanted to get all state funding to the district banned if they had this program, and the district said, we're not getting rid of this program, even though we're only spending a few $1,000s on it. We're doing it.
She was a science teacher in a school in the LA area, and she had been supportive of African American students who were being discriminated against. She was not out as a lesbian then. And the gay students came to her and said, we see that you are helpful to these other students, and we need help because we're being bullied and discriminated against. Can you please help us?
It was actually an African-American gay student who came to her.
There you go. So she created really just a support group of kids to get together at lunch hour and talk to each other. And it grew into this huge statewide program of counseling and help.
We all tried to get it going in many of our localities with not a lot of success in New York, although we kept citing Project 10. But why don't we let Virginia, we have a 5-minute video of her telling the story of how she came to do this and what happened.
Yeah.
My name is Virginia Uribe. I believe that people will know me best for the beginning of the program that I started called Project 10 for the Los Angeles Unified School District. I didn't really think much about what my future would be until I got to college. For women in those days, in the Catholic college, teaching or social work or nursing were really the 3 things open, which is why I chose teaching. You were constricted in Catholic circles. I mean, you could only think a certain way, and you were not allowed to depart from that because Catholic dogma kept you confined. When I first started teaching, I went to a school that was primarily Jewish. It was like night and day to me. I mean, here were brilliant young people who were not constricted in their thinking by dogma. And that was a very enlightening thing to me, and part of my evolution, I would say, from being kind of a strict Catholic to being a recovering Catholic. When I was well out of college, this is in the 60s now, there was a great fight that went on between the Immaculate Heart nuns and the Cardinal in Los Angeles. Cardinal McIntyre was his name. They wanted to modernize and change their dress and so on, and he refused to let them do that, and he fired hundreds of teachers for that and dissolved the community. That is a very, very important moment in my life when that happened. The injustice of it all was probably what laid the foundation for my being aware of the injustices toward gay and lesbian youth. In 1984, I was a counselor, and a group of students came in one day at lunch, and they were very upset because a young gay man had been transferred to another school. And what happened was that he had been harassed by other students, and the way the school dealt with that, instead of dealing with the harassers, the school dealt with the situation by transferring him to another school. So these students met with me, and they thought that was so unfair. I saw reflected in them a lot of the things that I had read about gay and lesbian youth, and there was not much literature. So that crystallized in my mind that this was an underserved group of young people in the educational system, and that something should be done about that. And to my good fortune, the principal was very, very supportive. He said, we're public educators, and our job is to serve all of our students. And if this is an underserved group, which apparently it is from what you're saying, then I think we ought to try and develop some kind of a program. So that was the beginning. As I said, we didn't have a name. We thought, well, what are we going to call ourselves? One of my friends said, well, 10% of the population according to Kinsey, why don't you call it Project 10? So that's how Project 10 got started. Through Project 10, we tried to educate the personnel within the school district. Little by little, a couple other schools copied the idea. They attached it onto other counseling programs that they had, this idea that there would be an outreach to gay and lesbian youth. Then, in 1988, the principal calls me into the office, and he shows me this little note. And he said, someone from Sacramento just sent me this note. And he said, I think this is the beginning of the backlash that you're going to have. And sure enough, there was an enormous backlash orchestrated by the Traditional Values Coalition. They sent a memo to the Assembly Education Committee. They wanted to stop all of the money coming into the LA Unified School District if we didn't drop this program. So there was big uproar, and they had to have an open hearing, which they had. But through it all, the LA Board of Education stood behind the program. It's hard to believe that that's almost 30 years now, because things right now are so different. It's like, now it's the Renaissance compared to the Dark Ages back then.
That video was provided to us by The Lavender Effect, and you can go to thelavendereffect.org. They have an oral history project. You can hear the whole interview with Virginia Uribe and many others there. Thank you to The Lavender Effect.
And much as we'd like to think there is a renaissance, and certainly things have changed in the years since Project 10 was started, we have a couple of other stories today, educationally related, which are not such good news.
And by the way, I forgot to mention Gail Rolfe, who was Virginia's spouse for 30 years.
Yes.
Okay, moving on.
A real hero, Virginia Uribe. In Arizona, Lambda Legal Defense and the National Center for Lesbian Rights are suing to finally stop a 1991 law in Arizona that says you cannot promote homosexuality in doing AIDS education. And the legislature has tried to repeal this law, or our side of the legislature has tried, and failed for years. So now they're going into court to try to get rid of it.
Well, we have one less anti-LGBT legislator to worry about in Arizona. That would be Representative David Stringer. He resigned after his past arrests for sex with underage boys, 13 and 15, from Maryland, were revealed. This was apparently something that was sealed but found out about, and he still denies it. But he's 71 years old. He did this when he was 35. And he got a 0% rating from the gay group there.
Well, also the one they're finally going after is David Boren of Oklahoma, longtime senator from Oklahoma, longtime president of the University of Oklahoma.
Governor, I believe, too.
Governor of Oklahoma, and someone who...
Democrat.
And yes, and someone who we've heard about for decades as a closeted gay man, and now they're finally going after him for accusations of assaulting young men.
And he's re-assaulting one of the young men, not so young anymore, who he had gone after. And apparently the vice president of the university joined in the abuse.
Wow, yeah. And in Wyoming, in Cheyenne, at a junior high school, McCormick Junior High School, there's a big dust-up because of flyers like this being posted around the school attacking both gay students and black students. At the top it says it's great to be straight, it's not okay to be gay. At the bottom it says join the KKK. Wait a second. They define that as Confederate Kid Club.
Well,
Jeez. So, and the kids, the school is trying to ignore this and saying it's a one-time thing, but the kids are saying, no, this goes on all the time. We are assaulted continually. You have to do something about this.
So, had a good Reclaim Pride meeting this week, co-chaired by Ann Northrup and our friend Colin Ashley. And we have a picture of some of the Mount Rushmore there. These are great activists. Roberta Degnor, Jackie Rudin, Carly Rhodes, Leslie Kagan, Lori Arbiter. Is that how we say her name? Amanda Lugg. Everybody was pretty happy there because we had good news.
We had good news, which is that the New York Police Department has approved the march route for the Queer Liberation March on June 30th, starting at Sheridan Square in front of the Stonewall and on 7th Avenue South there, going up 7th Avenue on what is the end of the Heritage of Pride parade. They won't get there for days. 150 corporate floats in the Heritage of Pride parade. And they're going to squeeze them all by the Stonewall and Sheridan Square?
This is a chance for you to basically recreate the kind of march that we had, not we, but our ancestors had in 1970 when they went up 6th Avenue, because we're going to go up 6th Avenue eventually, right? And we're going to go up to the park.
Up
which
7th
is what
to 23rd, across 23rd, and up 6th to Central Park.
Which is what the pioneers did. And we're going to do that. So if you want to do that, you can do that with us. If you want to go back and be with your friends who are still going to be standing on the side streets waiting to go out in the parade for 9 hours, you go right ahead.
Be our guest. But if you want to have both fun and an outlet to express your frustration and anger at all the injustice you hear about on Gay USA, and join the Radical Fairies and the labor unions and LGBT people of all stripes, join us on June 30th for the Queer Liberation March. Go to reclaimpridenyc.org for details, and keep your eye on that.
Reclaim Pride always talks about why we march, and we tell you stories like this on this show all the time. Did we talk about the bills in Tennessee?
No.
They want to let adoption agencies discriminate. That passed the House 67 to 22. Yikes! It goes to the Senate and then to Governor Bill Lee. 9 other states have these laws. They have one to encourage schools to have discriminatory bathroom rules about transgender, and they have one that bars local governments from providing incentives to businesses that don't discriminate.
It is an
Hey,
An orgy of hate. But good news from Nevada, where the House there has voted to repeal the opposite-sex-only marriage law, which is outlawed by the Supreme Court decision. But states are doing this in anticipation of the Supreme Court perhaps overturning marriage equality.
And states are passing draconian anti-abortion laws to the extent that they're banning abortion entirely.
Yes.
And ready to take that to the Supreme Court and get Roe v. Wade overturned.
Well, I'm just talking about this thing at the moment.
All right.
And what I'm saying is that there are old laws on the books in many states that forbid same-sex marriage,
Yes.
which people have ignored because the Supreme Court legalized
Yes.
it. But if the Supreme Court delegalizes it, you're going to be left with those. They will make it state option, and some of those states have the old laws. So it is a good idea.
Nevada is one of the only states that's moved on that, I think.
Maybe. I think there may be one or two others. But here's a project for you. If you're looking for something to do, check your state law, see if that law forbidding same-sex marriage is still on the books.
It likely is.
Get rid of it.
We had, California has banned travel to South Carolina over its anti-LGBT adoption law.
Not all travel to South Carolina,
Well, I
just
know.
government-funded, government
yes.
employees, universities.
The movie stars can still
teams,
come
so-
out and film there. But, all right.
Yes.
All
All
right.
right, international news finally.
Let us do that. And where are we? We're going to start off with we're here in Kenya.
Okay. Yes. All right. In Kenya, LGBT refugee activists held a demonstration in front of a courthouse for 20 other LGBT refugees who had been arrested and held in jail. The LGBT refugees in Kenya are really something. They held that pride parade in the refugee camp last year that was so moving.
Right.
Amazing.
In Slovakia, they've elected their first woman president. Her name is Zuzana Kaputova. She's an environmental activist, an anti-corruption activist. We could use them here. She ran on the platform, "Stand up to evil," and on the values of humanism, solidarity, and truth. And she's very pro-LGBT.
Yes, that was part of her platform. And she defeated very right-wing candidates.
That's great.
Yeah. Well, actually, first Brunei.
Yes.
This week, the Sharia law goes into effect in Brunei that calls for
Death by stoning
Yeah.
for homosexuality and adultery. Now, most of this is only going to be applied to other Muslims, but there it is. It's draconian, it's awful, and it is getting pretty much, you'd have to say, universal condemnation from the West, at least.
yes.
And they don't care.
including the George Clooney's of this world.
Well, Clooney
and-
wants us to boycott all the hotels owned by the Sultan of Brunei.
Yes.
And that includes the Dorchester in London and the Beverly Hills Hotel out there in Los Angeles.
Hotel
and
Bel
I
Air.
had to listen to Bill Maher's show, Andrew Sullivan and Bill Maher calling this virtue signaling and silly. Well, who wants to spend their money at places that are going to benefit this horror show? And he's running
I
out.
don't play Trump golf courses.
Yeah, and he's running out of oil reserves, by the way.
Oh,
the
nice.
Sultan, yes.
Well, we're all going to switch to green energy anyway.
Right.
So
Anyway,
do good.
Michelle Bachelet at the UN condemned it, but even Ted Cruz condemned it.
Shocking.
They had to press the State Department to make a statement that this was not a good thing. They're against violence. Oh, really?
Well, the U.S. did one good thing this week. Excuse me while I cough. You can tell them about Grindr.
Oh, well, the Grinders, I heard that, well, there's two Grindr stories. First of all, that guy who sued them because they made fake profiles for him,
Yeah.
he lost his appeal to the Second Circuit Court of Appeals. His boyfriend did this. They said, if you want to sue your boyfriend, you can sue your boyfriend, but the law around this says that the provider cannot be held responsible.
He was going after the big bucks.
But Grindr is owned by by China. And the United States is stepping in and saying, we want Grindr to be divest from China, or we want the Chinese company to give it up because what we're worried about is that you're going to get all the information on people and be able to bribe them and compromise them, et cetera, because your information is obviously not safe.
They don't even have to hack into anything. It's just right there for them.
The Trump administration wants to get Grindr back. This is true.
It's true. It is true.
Okay. All right. In
Norway.
We want to do that? Okay, sure. The Norwegian Air.
Yep.
They name planes after iconic figures, and they've got one lined up for Harvey Milk on the fin there. Now, he's not the first gay person. They've done a whole bunch of others.
They've done Oscar Wilde, Virginia Woolf, Freddie Mercury.
Yeah, and now...
They call them tail fin heroes.
And by the way, there's still a controversy over renaming Terminal 1 at San Francisco for Harvey Milk. The Board of Supervisors passed a bill this week requiring signs to say Harvey Milk Terminal. And by the way, the Milk Foundation gave their Harvey Milk...
On second thought, I'm not sure I want to see Harvey Milk Terminal.
Touché. The Milk Foundation gave their Harvey Milk Award to Meghan McCain of The View.
Well, she is very pro-LGBT, although I haven't heard her speak out about either the Arizona representative or the no promo homo law in AIDS education. I would like to see her do that.
In Beirut, a military court ruled that homosexuality is not a crime. They're following the lead of the civil courts on that. They decided not to pursue a sodomy case.
I'm shocked to see that in Japan, they have new elementary school textbooks that include information on sexual orientation and gender identity. Elementary school textbooks in Japan, which is not the most gay-friendly place.
Or trans-friendly.
Yes, and now they have just put these out, and evidently I haven't heard of any backlash yet. So I think that's kind of stunning.
In South Korea, the National Human Rights Commission there is going to add a non-binary gender option to its official petition documents. They already have male, female, trans male, and trans female, but they understand there could be more than 4 genders.
In Bosnia and Herzegovina, in Sarajevo they're going to hold their first Pride event, parade, on September 8th.
And they're saying it's going to be a protest against inequality and a lack of access to public spaces.
Exactly.
They don't have sodomy laws there, but they have no protection for gay couples.
Well, this is why we're doing the Queer Liberation March, too, because we feel that the Heritage of Pride Parade is not political enough and doesn't take note of what's going on around the world.
Well, in Europe, they are not waiting to march. In Italy and Verona, tens of thousands marched against the anti-LGBT US-based World Congress of Families, calling it a vision of the world that belongs, for the most part, to the Middle Ages.
Well, this is
founded by Brian Brown.
Yes, our old pal Brian Brown, who was the one of the
National
top
Organization
3,
for Marriage or something. NOM.
Yes, anti-marriage equality activists, and now he's taking his show and taking it around the world because he's no longer so welcome here.
By the way, a Chinese lesbian dating app exposed 5 million profiles in a data breach.
Well,
it's been exposed since June of 2018, apparently, and now we're just learning about it.
They're just learning that it wasn't password protected. There's no evidence that anyone stole the data. And hey, we're open.
Oh, yeah, you're well. I don't think everybody in China is.
Another education story from Birmingham, England, where they have some lessons for elementary kids on LGBT issues, but the Muslim parents in the neighborhood are not happy about this.
And yet, Muslim attitudes in America, for instance, are more pro-gay than evangelical attitudes.
Yes.
You know.
I'm just noting this story in Birmingham, and the teachers are asking for more support for what they're doing.
This is from Rob Shooter's old stomping grounds.
Yes.
In northern Russia, in a small city there, which we're unsure of the name of, police raided the local LGBT center, long-standing, and they were seeking violations of the anti-LGBT law there, the anti-propaganda law to minors. And this group at least has a lawyer defending them in court.
Well, it's an intimidation move. You know, the cops move in and they sort of toss everything in the joint and stare at you and then leave. But this is the oldest LGBT center in Russia, which is amazing, in this tiny town in northern Russia.
And the authorities finally discovered them.
Evidently. And in Baku, in Azerbaijan, the cops are arresting gay people and trans people and throwing them in jail. Another Why We March for Reclaim Pride. And in the Cayman Islands,
Oh, yes.
there was a cruise line that used to go to the Cayman Islands. In fact, it was a gay cruise
Lots
line
of
that
them
used
did.
to go to the Cayman Islands, and we would have protests and we would yell and scream. Well, now these two women in the front there with their legal team behind them sued for the right to marry in the Cayman Islands, and the court said yes.
The Chief Justice basically said yes,
Yep.
and the governor has said, okay, the legislature hasn't weighed in, as they did in Bermuda, against it. So
Well, the court has ordered the legislature to make the marriage law gender neutral.
Yeah, well, we don't like being told what to do.
But on the other hand, it stood for a week without anybody screaming.
Trump says you should get rid of the judges.
That's right, he did, and not in this context. And the hope is that this, as a British territory, will have a domino effect on the rest of the British territories that don't have marriage equality.
right.
But we
That's right.
hope that every time one of them changes. So it's moving along.
You on to AIDS news?
Yes.
Well, the CDC director, Robert Redfield, was speaking this week, and he was shouted down by AIDS activists at a Speech to AIDS Watch conference after he refused to explain why the agency won't enforce its patent on Truvada. The government holds that patent. A heckler told him to leave the ACA in place also, and the room erupted. But on Truvada, he said he can't comment on the negotiations with Gilead, if there are any.
Well, Well, let me explain this because it's a little nuanced. I don't know who invented Truvada or who Gilead certainly holds that patent, but this isn't about Truvada per se. It's about using Truvada as PrEP, as pre-exposure prophylaxis. And the government did the studies on the efficacy of Truvada as PrEP, proved the case that it worked, has the patent on the use of Truvada as PrEP. It has other uses.
But Truvada, with other uses, is also sold at a very high rate, extremely high rate. We want all that
exactly
brought down.
I'm not denying that. I'm explaining that it's not the basic Truvada patent. It's the patent for its use as PrEP. Because people who are living with HIV also take Truvada as therapy in combination with more drugs. So it's a different formulation and it's a different use. But Truvada sales for PrEP provide the Gilead with $3 billion a year. They charge $2,000 a month for the pills, which cost $6 to make. So yes, activists are very upset, and the CDC head Redfield is not answering questions. Very ugly.
In better news, we have a transplant first. Johns Hopkins did a kidney transplant from a person living with HIV to an HIV-positive recipient. This is apparently a first.
And they've done not living donors, but this is the first living donor. Nina Martinez, 35 years old, a marathon runner, very healthy, living with HIV. So thank you, Nina.
Right.
And there's also news that U.S. viral suppression of HIV, 54% of those living with it. In the UK, Switzerland, and Sweden, it's 84%. We're not doing a good job.
All right, entertainment news. Ann and I saw Ain't Too Proud, The Life and Times of the Temptations. Of course, it's great music. They're the #1 rhythm and blues group of all time. I thought it had a rather tedious book, but very talented performers in this show.
I called it barely tolerable.
But, you know, Diana Ross makes an appearance, so is Barry Gordy. Not actually them, but people playing them.
No.
And then Bill and I saw a play called June is the First Fall by Yi Long Liu. And kudos to the Yangtze Rep Company for bringing this play about a gay Asian theme to the new Ohio Theater in Greenwich Village. And it's a very good ensemble led by Alton Olburo there as the prodigal gay son returning to Hawaii from New York, where he fled familial homophobia. But I felt it only really took theatrical flight in the last couple of scenes. Those are the kind of scenes that we need to see. The rest of it was more people telling people about things rather than showing us things.
New gay American Idol contestant to watch, Jeremiah Lloyd Harmon, rejected by his parents, made the top 20.
They fired him as the janitor in his father's church.
Yes. I think we have time to see the trailer of
Let's do it.
Special.
Okay.
News.
Hey, focus. Save that for Grindr.
I love that you think I have enough self-esteem to be on Grindr.
I have cerebral palsy.
What's that?
It's a disability in the brain manifested through muscular incoordination.
Okay, now you're just being a drama queen.
I'm Ryan, the intern.
Listen, Cheyenne.
Ryan.
I need viral content now.
I don't know what I'd write about. Oh, I was hit by a car.
Everybody, come hug Ryan. He was hit by a car and now he's a weird, sad lip forever.
Thank you so much.
Okay, that's great. That's enough. Thank you.
If you could get rid of the thing you hate most about yourself, the thing no one else understands, wouldn't you do it?
We gotta get the hell out of here.
Everyone just assumed my limp was from my accident, and then I never corrected them.
Your disability is part of you.
My mom has a secret boyfriend.
Didn't you want her to get a life? You told me she was like Brie Larson in Room, but like by choice.
I'm moving out.
I'd like to see how you function without an on-call maid.
Getting hit by a car basically kind of just messed my body up.
Doesn't look so messed up to me.
Sometimes I just feel like as a non-skinny, non-white girl, I gotta work overtime.
I was in the closet about being gay, and then I was in the closet about being disabled, and now, no more closets.
Diversity hire. You got anything? I'm kidding. Straight white men are canceled.
April 12th on Netflix, and congratulations to our friends at After Forever, who won 8 Emmy nominations for Outstanding Digital Daytime Drama Series.
And congratulations to Jay-Z and Beyonce for their awards at the GLAAD Media Awards in LA. Jay-Z talked about his lesbian mom, who won the award last year, and Beyonce talked about her uncle, who died of AIDS, Uncle Johnny. Very moving.
Apparently we have some more time. We never got to talk about why people aren't having sex anymore, but you saw that survey?
No.
It's being led by young people. The number of young people who haven't had, up to 29, who haven't had sex within the last year has doubled. And there's all kinds of things they attribute this to.
Civilization is coming to an end.
Living at home. It's mostly among men. It's not women.
Enjoy it while you can.
Bye.
We're on our way out. Bye.